a publisher approached me about doing a book just on the furniture of the Grove Park Inn, and it was great fun, and I was very proud of it. And I'll even say that my son didn't pay any attention to it until he went to school one day, and his literature teacher pointed out to him that his father's book had been awarded the Thomas Wolfe Literary Award for 2009. So, thank you. First time it's gone to a work of nonfiction. So, yeah. So, it's a good story. One of the workshops at the Grove Park Inn slide is actually supposed to go a little bit earlier. This is Amy Miller, who teaches a stenciling workshop. One of the sort of the overlooked, underutilized things at the Arts and Crafts Conference is the afternoon before and the morning of the conference. We have these hands-on workshops for if you want to learn from Dennis Bertucci about stains and dyes, from Amy Miller about stenciling, Ann Chavez about embroidery, Ron Van Ostrand does a metalsmithing. Have these great ones. Getting toward the end here, reproductions. 1992, the antique dealers threatened to boycott the Arts and Crafts Conference because they feared that the Stickley Company, primarily, was going to ruin the antiques market. They were scared. They were scared. I mean, they had invested a lot of money in the antiques, and they thought that their livelihood was at risk. And the Arts and Crafts Conference had always been, from the first year, a showplace for both the new and the old. One of the distinctions I've always made is to keep them in separate rooms. So when you're in the antiques room, you know you're looking at nothing but antiques. When you're in the other areas, you know you're looking at nothing but new. There's no crossover at all, because nobody wants to be confused. I remember one time at somebody else's show watching a young couple looking at what appeared to be a Gustav Stickley Morris chair for $1,200, and they were just beside themselves. They were so excited. They were talking it over whether or not they should buy it. And I was standing there eavesdropping, and I realized they thought it was an antique for $1,200. And, and the more, all it had was a price tag on it. I think the dealer thought that the price would indicate that it's new. But to a new collecting couple, they didn't know. And I didn't have anything. The dealer, came over, talked to them, and you could just see they were just deflated. They thought, oh, they were going to buy a Gustav Stickley Morris chair for $1,200. Well, they could have, but it was the Gustav Stickley design made new. So, but as we found out, it didn't. It did not make the antiques market did not crash because of it. If anything, the Stickley Company and the other companies that are making the new works have brought more people into the arts and crafts arena. I have new stuff right alongside old stuff in my house. I love it all, and you keep the new stuff long enough, pretty soon it looks beat up. Looks like the old stuff. And speaking of which, if you took a glance at this one of these is original, one of them's a reproduction. At first glance, you would assume the one on the left is the reproduction. No, that's the original. The Grove Park Inn refinished their antiques many, many, many times. The one on the right is a reproduction made by Robert House, who exhibits at the Grove Park Inn. And he's very careful. We have very strict rules about markings. He does not have the Roycroft mark on that one. He has his own mark on it, so there's no confusion with it. But it just goes to show that the quality of workmanship in the contemporary show. Last down to the end here now. This is something that I've been wanting to see happen for a long time. This is an example of one of the many shop marks that are out there we don't know. I think one of the things that I'm waiting to see happen and going to help make happen is that we need to take use of the internet to help communicate with each other and to share information with each other about things like shop marks and information and makers and decals and that sort of thing. So it would be nice someday if we had basically like an online encyclopedia of arts and crafts as a way to go to help identify pieces and interact with each other. It's something I'm working on now, and hopefully we're going to see something come of it here in the very near future. And that's where we end. What is your question? I told you all the ones I've been peppered with over the years, and I'm maybe exhausted them all, but if you have any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them for you. I knew I could put you to sleep.
Yes, sir. Question about paste wax. You showed that, I guess, Cellaret, the
yes.
plastic drink stand.
Yeah.
You would wax a piece like that?
I would wax the top of that piece immediately. I really would. The sides of it, I might not. I was sitting in my dining room the other day, 4:30 in the morning. I get up early. I was writing. Had my laptop in there. I let my cat in, and I'm sitting there typing. Right next to me is a Gustav Stickley bookcase. Nice, I had it for many, many years. The cat peed on it. He just walked over and peed on it. Could not believe it.
You can do something about these cats.
He went about 35 yards. He skidded across the ground like a frisbee. I was mad. You never know what's going to happen. That's the only thing. Now, I wiped it off, no damage done, but you know, ammonia and shellac, they don't get along. You know, so you know, it would have been a terrible. It would have been a travesty.
God, you were sitting there.
I was sitting right there, and he was mad because I wouldn't feed him.
Oh.
You know, how many people own cats? You know, they do things like that. So, you know, I might wax it. I might wax it.
So what will you?
You know what? 1914 Arts and Crafts House. It was my, it was a labor of love. I lived in it for 10 years. It was a 5,000 square foot 1914 house. It had been on the market for a year. Nobody wanted it. This was 1989. And I fell in love with it. Bought it the same day I saw it. Spent 10 years fixing it up. And boy, 5,000 square feet, you can put a lot of stuff in it. I bought everything. Of course, I was in North Carolina. Nobody else cared. I was buying stuff that just, you know, it was dirt cheap. Some of it was good, some of it wasn't, but you know what, you got lots of room, you know. And so, but now I've moved out to the country. Got a little ranch house, you know, half the size of that. So I've downsized. And so I don't have room for it. Right now I'm at that point where, and like I said, I have a new couch. My grandfather clock is a Stickley reproduction. I mix the old with the new. I would say probably the last 5 pieces I bought have been by contemporary craftspeople.
So there isn't some piece that you've always wanted, that if it came
they're
up.
the corner of our dining room.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are pieces. I still bid at pieces at auction, but I'm still thinking I'm buying in the 80s and 90s. You know, we get spoiled.
Can't get over that.
I went to an auction, or sent a bid to an auction for a Gustav Stickley dresser that the veneer was flapping on either side of it. And I was kind of excited just about having a restoration project. I didn't have anything in my workshop at that time. And so, you know, I was getting like $800 or $900 or something like that. And it went for twice that, you know. So you know, sure, there are pieces out there. I used to have a flat arm, they call it 332 Gus Morris chair, which to me is just one of those, like the hex table out there. There are certain pieces that just say, this is what arts and crafts is about. And I had one of those for a while and then let it go, and you know, kind of wish you had, there's some pieces I wish I had back. Yeah. David, yeah.
Two questions, Bruce.
Yeah.
On protection and finish. Your experience here at the farms a number of years, and thank you for all the support through the years. And the cabinets, by the way, you didn't tell everybody the story of Mimwax and who finished the cabinets for us and brought them back here, so thank you. But,
You're welcome.
The fireplace, I had a question the other day. The fireplace hoods here, what's the story on them? I mean,
you know what, and I don't know. Okay. I would tell you that I don't know. I know the little bit of research I've done on the farms has been about the pieces that were here. Okay. And it was the essay I wrote for the book, because I think and I still think it's amazing, not what I wrote, but and it's fascinating when you look at what Gus could pick for his house, what he did pick. You know, it's a fun little essay. And all I'm doing is recounting what we see in the photographs. But I will say, I've never done any research into the metalwork here, or Gustav Stickley's metalwork. I've always been a furniture guy, first and foremost. And so I don't have an answer for that.
Question one. Point two, in looking for marks in that, I've always used the term buy by your eye. So what pleases you, and I think that's one of the philosophies of the arts and crafts. If it pleases you, buy it. You know.
Right. The only caveat I'm going to put on that, though, is that, you know, sooner or later the price comes to play. Yeah. And what I would say to that is you don't want to overpay for something, because very few of these pieces are one of a kind.
Right.
even that Harvey Ellis music cabinet, there were, I mean, sure, there's only 6 of them out there, so the chances of running across one again is probably not going to happen. But we're not talking about, you know, one-of-a-kind pieces. And so what you have to watch out for is that you're not paying for a, I mean, I'm all for design. You know, when you talk about appeal, your eye, you're talking about proportions. But you don't want to pay for an original finish that's not. That's the point I was trying to make. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Other than Gus of Stickley, what other furniture makers do you like?
Oh, the top tier are all good. I like Roy Crofters. They were very inconsistent. They made some of the clunkiest, weirdest stuff. The Roycroft Furniture Shop is another fascinating story. Roycroft metalware is fantastic, very sophisticated, and it shows the fact that it had Carl Kipp as a very gifted designer and manager. The furniture shop was just sort of an afterthought. Elbert Hubbard didn't care much about furniture. He never really had a furniture designer or foreman that was there for very long. So the Roycroft furniture is very inconsistent, but you gotta love it just because it's got a charm about it. L&J.G. Stickley, you know, we sort of downplay Leopold Stickley a little bit too much, and Mike Daniel from the Stickley Company is going to be speaking at the Grove Park Inn this year on Leopold Stickley. And I think in a lot of ways Leopold is sort of the forgotten brother, because Leopold didn't publish books, he didn't write magazine articles, he was a businessman first and foremost, but he hired great designers. David Cathers, more than anybody else, has done such a wonderful job identifying these people. Because, you know, we have a tendency to put our leaders, whether they're our current president or whether they're William Morris and Gustav Stickley, we put them on pedestals. And, you know, Gustav Stickley couldn't, no way that one man could design all that furniture. And we know he didn't make it. You know, he was a factory owner. He had 150 employees. So sometimes we give too much credit to those guys just because it's convenient. And we forget that there were designers and craftsmen and craftswomen who were there doing the day-to-day work. And so, you know, L&J.G., you know, there's very few of them. Even then when you get into, like, you know, a company like J.M. Young, which you haven't heard very much about. J.M. Young, Mike Clark has done a lot of research on J.M. Young. They basically got when Leopold in the 20s kind of got tired of arts and crafts and went off to making colonial reproductions, he started funneling all his orders over to J.M. Young. J.M. Young made arts and crafts furniture up until World War II. You know, it's one of those things where we think that it all ended when Gustav Stickley went bankrupt in 1915. Not at all. Roy Crofter stayed in business until 1938. Kalo Silver in Chicago stayed in business until the 60s. J.M. Young until World War II. So the arts and crafts movement went a lot further along than 1915. You know, we revere. It's time for me to get in the car and drive to Hartford.
God knows what you'll be saying by the time you get there.
I feel like I've been talking for the last 3 days here. You know, we love our Gus, you know, but you know, there's a lot of other good ones out there at the same time. And, you know, his is such a, you know, in some ways a tragic story. And it's a great story, but there were a lot of others out there working who didn't get anywhere near the credit of their publicity that did great things.
Hey Bruce, I sort of have the impression that young hipsters in their 20s and 30s today are collecting mid-century modern. So it kind of makes me wonder if the arts and crafts revival isn't a baby boom generation phenomenon. What do you think?
I think that definitely that was where the fire got built, but I don't see any sign of the fire going out.
You do not?
No. I do think that there is every generation is always looking for the next thing. But when I look closely at mid-century modern, with a few exceptions, it's kind of disappointing.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's going to be more faddish than anything is going to rival arts and crafts. It's not built on a philosophy. You know, it's not built, you know, there's no foundation underneath it. It's just a style, like Art Deco and Art Nouveau.